This conference will now be recorded.
All right, Kyle. Listen, I genuinely appreciate you jumping on the podcast. Very excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the invite, man. I'm excited too.
Great. Just so you can give the listeners a little bit of background, what's your background and what's your journey to your current role?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Northern Iowa, graduated with a degree in marketing with a sales emphasis. My first job out of college was working for the Minnesota Timberwolves in the inside sales program. Um, Graduated out of the inside sales program, was hired on to a full-time role within the same company, membership sales, selling mostly season tickets. Worked within that role for about a year, and then actually took a transfer over to the Minnesota Lynx sales and service team, our WNBA affiliate. Worked my way up with that group to senior account executive. Was there for probably 2 years, 3 years almost. And then within the last 6 months, accepted a job down here with our new affiliate, the Iowa Wolves, and have been down here ever since in the
Nice,
director of sales and service.
nice. And so, can you talk a little bit? We've got a lot of people that listen from minor league sports, but also we have a lot of people that listen from the professional sports properties. What's been the one big difference, not necessarily in terms of sales, but in terms of day to day working for a G League team and working for an NBA or WNBA team?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There's differences to it as well. The big one being just the size of staff. In Minnesota, we had something like 150 full-time staff members. In Iowa, we have 9. So, as you can imagine, that requires everyone to do some things that are not necessarily in their job description. We jokingly refer to that as the line in the job description that says "other tasks as assigned." So it's a little bit of everything from tearing up or tearing down after game days to setting up promotional stands to jumping in to help out here and there wherever you're really asked. Which is obviously can be tough some days when you've got enough to do just on the sales front, but also has been rewarding just getting some exposure to some of those other things. Has been fun as well.
Yeah, and I think there's usually people that stomp in both camps, right? Either I came up through minor league sports and that's the way you got to do it, or I came through professional sports and that's where you got to learn that. And I actually had the opposite path from you, small team to larger team, and I can say there are great things about having the amount of resources that you'll be able to have and thinking about how do I use all those resources. Like you would with the Wolves and the amount of incredible resources you guys had, especially when you moved into those new offices. And then those changes to what you were just talking about, and literally like I have to learn every area of the business because I'm going to have to touch every area of the business just based on the size of the staff that we have.
Yeah, no, that was one of the big things for me is when I first started transitioning was, hey, whose job is this? And it was like, well, I think that's kind of your job. Oh, okay. I guess I need to learn how to send out all the emails and blast the database out whenever we have a special offer that's coming out. Like, hey, whose job is it to pull the sales report and turn those numbers into league? Well, yours. Oh, okay. I need to learn how to do that. So there was a little bit of a learning curve, but different types of growth, but both very powerful.
That's awesome. And I know you've had the ability to come in contact with some incredible people in the sports industry. Who are some of the people that you consider some of your best mentors along the way? And then specifically, what was it about them or their sales style or their management style that really stood out to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A few people that stand out to me. So when I first started with the Minnesota Timberwolves, we actually had just gotten a new vice president of ticket sales. It was Corey Breton, who's now with LAFC.
Yep.
And his philosophy, just his mindset, I thought was outstanding. Looking back, it was really formative for me. Just he challenged us to think bigger of ourselves, of the organization. One of the thoughts early on that he imparted was, what can you be the best at the world at? Which is someone who's just graduated from college and is happy to work in professional sports. It was kind of a big question, kind of a heavy question. But just that big mindset of like, you have the ability and the resources to literally be the best in the world at what you do, it's up to you to do that type of thing. So he had a lot of just mantras and things like that early on in my career as a young ticket seller, being able to always think bigger of myself and of the organization was powerful. So I'd definitely say him. When I was promoted on to the full-time staff with the Minnesota Timberwolves, I worked for Jake Vernon, who is now the vice president of sales for the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx. And one thing he really just challenged me on specifically was just getting buttoned up and trying to compete at a higher level. Not necessarily going through the motions as much or being kind of content with where I was at the time. It was easy to fall into the trap of, hey, I got promoted to a full-time job. Like I kind of made it. And his thing was like, well, no, you really haven't. Like, if you want to get further down your career, you need to get better, at these specific things. And B2B selling was a big thing that, he imparted, years of experience previously, with the Pacers and then with his own, startup business as well. So a lot of kudos to Jake for really ironing me out and, polishing me up a little bit, from still a fairly raw inside sales rep into, pretty proficient seller. And then I would say I never was directly reporting to him, but Jeff Muniche, who's the VP of fan experience in Minnesota. I have a great relationship with Mun. He's been with the Timberwolves since day one, since they were collecting deposits to get an NBA franchise. And just really his approach to customer service. Just treating people really, really well. Being genuinely interested in what they have to say, in your coworkers as well. Forming those relationships, and just his general mindset and philosophy about how to treat people and how to be, a long-term part of the community, was great. I was fortunate to be able to actually teach a class at the University of Minnesota with him, so got to know him in a little bit of a different light as well. And just really, really appreciated his time and his just years of insight too, that he was more than willing to pass along.
Yeah, you can't have been in Minnesota and not run across Jeff.
That's right.
In some shape or form. And so I want to touch on that point really quick, because I think it's so important. In sales, sometimes you get this mentality, right, that I got to sell it, close it, move on, sell it, close it, move on. What's been the value for you? Because I believe it's so critical in sports that we have that, because these people are fans of our product, that we do take that time to really care about them. What's been the value in getting that worldview that Jeff may have been able to impart on you? Not just in terms of how you treat people, but what's been the value to you as a salesperson because of it?
Yeah, no, it's been huge. It's something that I actually learned as I switched also from, selling just the Timberwolves. It was, sell the full season package and then pass it along to the service team, and they'll take care of it from there, and you go out and hunt the next one, which was great because it let me learn just try and close and try and close and try and always find and prospect. But on the Lynx side, it was, hey, these are your people. Like, you're responsible for, this book of business, and you need to grow it by this much. And it took a little bit of a learning curve my first season, really getting to understand that service side of things. And Jeff's been there for years, and so it leaned on him a little bit, leaned on some of the veteran Lynx staff. Aaron Henning, who's now the director of the Lynx sales and service team, passed along a lot of lessons on just, hey, when somebody's giving you a hard time on this, be direct, move on, don't let it affect the next, interaction you have with them. Even if they treated you poorly, you still need to treat them well. And just understand that without them, we really don't exist. So the better we can treat people, the big thing that Mun taught me was, we're in the business of repeat sales. Yep. We can't go out and sell, our arena in Minnesota is about 19,000 seats. You can't go out and find 19,000 different people every single night. It just would be a nightmare. So you need to sell people so they have a great time, come back and maybe catch another couple games. And then the next season, maybe they'll, do a mini plan. And then maybe the season after that, they'll do a mini plan and a group outing. And then the next season after that, they'll jump on with a full season membership. So just understanding that growth to the relationship, and that we need to develop and culture that relationship. And really, by doing that, they'll speak positively of us in the community, even if the team side doesn't necessarily live up to the expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Corey, I think Corey's certainly one of the most positive people in the sports industry in a lot of ways, and I see that rub off
Yeah.
in terms of how I viewed you as one of the more positive people I've come across in all my sales trainings. Can you talk about it's not every day is a great day, but can you talk about the benefits of having a positive, proactive state of mind while you're in sales?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely give kudos to Corey on that of just always, hey, the next day, the next call, just brush it off and move on. Was definitely formative in my younger sales career. A little bit of just how I was raised as a kid, just the positivity. Shout out to my mom, and always just challenging us to be, choose happy, choose positive. Within sales, it is hard without a doubt. What we do is fairly straightforward, but it isn't necessarily easy. And so for me, it was just the way that I approach it is I can let a day get me down and I can get frustrated about things, but it literally does me no good. It doesn't move me forward. It doesn't help my next sales conversation. It doesn't help my teammates. And so I've just always found that my own experience helping to be around people and lift people up, even if I'm not selling, then at least I'm contributing to the overall culture of the team. And so I think that the idea that it just does me more good to just stay up than to get down. Not to say that I don't have those moments, but it just long-term impact wise, it's just better for every situation if I'm more positive in my approach.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, you're also doing a disservice to your fans, right? Because if you take some of that negativity into a follow-up conversation, then you're affecting that person's ability to save some money and come out more often, because nobody wants to buy something in a negative environment.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. One of the culminations of just the positivity was we had the grand reopening of Target Center, which we had a $20 million renovation on, and it was all hands on deck. So I was on the Link staff at the time, but we wanted to be a part of this opening and help the Timberwolves staff out as well. And our home opener, unexpectedly had 70-degree temperature, which was awesome. The challenge is that meant everyone was out on the patios and bars all through downtown Minneapolis, and basically 10,000 of our fans came through this grand new entrance off the street level, which is not ideal. So we had people being like, I can't get in. This is taking forever. You guys are horrible. And just having to be like, you're right. Like, this isn't a great experience. Thanks so much for coming out and being patient and just letting somebody out and moving on to the next and having somebody else be mad at you as well. And obviously we ironed out those details, but it wouldn't do me any good, wouldn't do the fans any good if I'm saying like, hey, like, appreciate it, but like, chill, dude. Like, you're going to get it eventually. Like, that just makes them even more angry.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I see that distinguishes really great sports salespeople, and I think it's pretty specific to sports, is just that level of empathy for reminding yourself that these people are fans in the sales process too, right? Like, you go sell, pharmaceutical sales. There aren't a lot of people that are, gigantic fans of Lyrica or whatever the next thing is, right? Like, there are real fans of this. And so having that empathy for them, but also being human in that process of saying, if the team's not doing well, being able to be like, listen, nobody wants this team to win more than I do, right? Like, I talk to you guys all the time. And a lot of times, young reps get so focused on passing along the product, that they forget these are fans and to show real empathy for them.
No, and I completely agree with you, especially when the team's not doing well. I think it's even more important. Fortunately or unfortunately, when I was selling full time with the Timberwolves, were some of our worst seasons in franchise history. Unfortunate because obviously it's always easier when the team's winning. All of a sudden the entertainment level is much higher, and even the hot dogs are tastier and the beer's a little bit colder when the team is winning than when they're losing. But being able to grow as a sales rep in an environment where you couldn't lean on the team performance to get you through and to help move some products, I think long term actually did me a lot of good.
Yeah, that's terrific. So you've got to be on a pretty short list of people who have now sold the NBA, the WNBA, and the G League. And I think that gives, a really cool perspective for you as you continue to move on in your career. So, I'm not a huge fan of asking two questions at once, but, what has been similar about selling all three of those things? And what have been some of the bigger differences that you've seen between the three?
Yeah, it's definitely been a really cool experience. I know I'm the only one within our organization that sold Timberwolves, Lynx, and Iowa Wolves. As far as I know, I'm the only person in the league that's sold the NBA, WNBA, and G League. If there's somebody else, I'd love to connect with you to compare notes. But for me, really, as much as it is different, it is the same. So the similarities are, the product blend is traditionally being very similar: full season, half season, some type of small partial, the group outing, some premium stuff. So in terms of just the product blend, they're very, very similar to each other. The fan bases are probably the most notably different. With the NBA, you definitely have the highest level of kind of corporate buyer. You also can lean on the league and just the reputation of the league a little bit more than on the other two. I can know that, when LeBron comes to town, when Steph comes to town, that I'm going to have a really good crowd and that I can push and be a little more bullish with that type of a game. With the W, you're starting to get that a little bit, I think. Fortunately, I sold with the Minnesota Lynx, who had one of the better fan bases and a lot of success on the team side. And we can play up a little bit of the rivalry between initially when I was selling ourselves in Phoenix and most recently ourselves in the LA Sparks. But really, it's one or two games, and then you're having to find a way to sell the other games. And in the G League, there's no real sense of rivalry, at least that I've experienced so far. So you're really having to generate that kind of from the go. That is a challenge in terms of also the team side of things. I think with the NBA, you're dealing with an NBA player who is known across the entire world, and has to balance that out with the multi-million-dollar contract and making good on that. So that can prove challenging in terms of player interaction a little bit, no fault of their own. With the W, I don't think there's a more engaged group of athletes than the WNBA players right now. I think they understand to grow the game, they have to really be involved in the community. So that was really cool because you knew that they were going to interact with your fans and do a really great job with that. And our Lynx players do an outstanding job. And with the G League, the big challenge is the roster can be very different year to year. So you don't necessarily have that longevity of kind of building a fan base around a player, because guys can get called up and brought back down. I'm sure people that are in the minor leagues can relate to this a little bit more, and I'm just learning more about it. Is building a relationship around a player, or a fandom around a player can be a little bit tougher. You kind of have to build it more around a team and the experience, which is something that we're trying to do right now down here in Iowa.
So how do you sell an experience? Because I think, a lot of times, no matter what we're selling, we should always be selling the experience first. But, when we're in the NBA and even the WNBA a little bit, to your point, sometimes we can become a little bit too reliant on a LeBron James, or we can become a little too reliant on someone. And then, we just got to know that one day we're going to wake up and they aren't going to be there. And ultimately, or, at some point, to be a great salesperson, you're going to have to sell the dates with, no offense, your team's playing the Timberwolves.
No, you're exactly
what have you learned about selling a fan experience in Iowa that, you potentially would love to make sure that you take back, and when you make it back on the NBA or WNBA side that you'd be able to teach?
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I learned this a little bit with the W, and I'm applying it even more so and trying to craft this a little bit more so down here in Des Moines, is understanding that people don't come to sporting events, typically speaking, for sports, which is very counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
They're coming for reasons beyond just watching specifically, just checking out the game and really getting engrossed in the details. Now there are certain people that do. You have your really passionate followers of the game that just really appreciate the pick and roll versus the zone defense, right? There are those people. but more often than not, people are looking for something to do and something that'll create a memory. So getting them sometimes to realize that is just as important as realizing that ourselves. And challenging a little bit, politely challenging them, like, hey, when they're coming after, hey, the team wasn't any good, or you guys got blown out. Like, okay, well, how's the experience? You said you went to the game with your son. How was spending that time with your family at the game? How often is it you guys are able to spend time as a family at the game? Okay, well, it sounds like, you guys had a really great time spending time as a family while coming out to an Iowa Wolves game. How often do you think you might want to do that this upcoming season, right? We're in the business of providing memories and great times. And so making sure that we focus on, okay, does this create a great memory? Does this create a great experience? It is vital, especially to what we do down in Iowa, because we can't, lean as much on like, well, they didn't have a great time, but they got to see, Kobe came through the town, so that was cool. So they got to see one of the greatest players. So they'll talk about that a lot. Like, we got to be buttoned up on every detail from, the entrance, was their will call experience great? Are the line staying short? Were the concession stands moving along? Were they able to get into their seats okay? Is the sound, the lights, the music, is that all on par? Because that matters just that much more.
Sorry for cutting up. I want to make sure that people take a second on that, because it's such a critical point, right? Sure. People will take a first action because LeBron's in the house, or they'll take a first action because you trade for Jimmy Butler, or they'll take a first action because they want to make sure they see Maya Moore before they die. But there's a huge difference between why someone comes out that first time and what drove them to the action, and what gets them to become maybe off of a 5-game plan holder to a half season, and a half season to a full season. And the differences in there come completely down to how you're able to recreate that experience of being in the arena with the people they care about, or the people they're trying to do business with as a salesperson yourself, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Sometimes you are the difference maker, truly. It's your memory of the fact that last time they came to an arena, little Timmy wasn't able to be there because he had to study for a math test. Then next time seeing him at the game, being like, hey, how'd that go? It's the little difference of someone's bringing their clients out and you're stopping by and saying hello at their seats and talking up your client and just talking about how great your relationship is with them. That can make the difference in their experience. And whether they want to continue to do business with you or continue to grow the relationship into something even greater. It's those little things. Slight side story. I had a gentleman who called me up and just wanted to purchase 2 tickets for his mom to come out to a game, taking her out for her birthday. Great, sounds good. Brought him out, put the name up on the Jumbotron, told him when to see it, stopped by with just a little Lynx Coach Reeve bobblehead. And they thought it was the greatest thing ever. He sent me a follow-up thank you note. I reached out and said, hey, no, thank you. Appreciate you reaching out and thinking of us for your mom's birthday. If we can be of service, we'd love to have you back. Give me a shout if there's anything we can do. Come playoff time, he reached back out and had expressed, hey, I would love to come out to a playoff game. My mom's been following the team a lot ever since coming out to that game. Lo and behold, fast forward a little bit, they ended up buying a full season right after coming through the playoffs. Come to find out through talking with him over the course of the next Lynx season, he was actually a CFO at a major company in Minneapolis. And after we got through that Lynx season, his company actually bought 4 seats that were 3 rows up on the Timberwolves side. So an investment on the Lynx side that started at $40 ended up turning into a lifetime account, and they're still ticket holders today with both teams of over $40,000.
Yep. And listen, I want to. That's another awesome point too. By the way, I mean, listen, we get taught so much that we need to drive urgency, we need to close them now, and I don't disagree with either of those things, right? But sometimes we also have to take into account that it's more important to follow them on their journey. And if they give us all indications that they will buy, they will come back, you're better off just investing in the long-term relationship, with someone and doing the right thing by them than trying to hammer that family home, those season tickets just to get playoff access, right? It's making sure that you're following and you're dragging them through it to some extent, but you're also going on that journey of potentially being a season ticket holder with that family, with that couple, and with that organization. And as long as they're giving you good indicators that they want to continue to work with you, you've always got to make a sale in the future. And that was something, I always told my sales reps is it's important that you sell something today, but it's also important that, if today is July, we're going to ask you to sell something in August and September and October. And so cutting the head despite the body isn't always the best way to go about sales.
No, I completely agree. And again, that's something I learned a little bit more as I got more on the service side of things, and just I was with these people on the Link side for 3 years. And so being able to take somebody and grow them for a few years, people on the service side of this industry will be able to speak to this probably much better than I could. That just be able to develop that relationship and grow that relationship into referrals, into add-ons, into just all these little things, is a huge difference maker in your own business, and can really make the difference for the experience for the fan.
Yeah, and it changes your perspective, spending time on the service side. And, this was always something I'd talk to my reps about, even if they pass along season ticket things, their partial plans were their leads, having to do some customer service will change your perspective on the buying process. There's no doubt about that. So you're now a director, which is fun for you as a lowly account executive, and you're now a director with 5 years of sales experience under your belt. If you could go back and talk to yourself as an inside sales rep and be like, man, you should really avoid these things, or here's some advice, what would those things be?
Yeah, good question. I think if I were to look back, one of the things I guess I would encourage myself to do is just remain patient, right? Just remain patient. I think inside sales reps and having, got out of inside sales, but still stayed very involved with the inside sales program, and trying to help coach up and mentor the next generations of great sellers with the Timberwolves and Lynx. There's a certain sense of urgency, which I understand. You just got a job, you're probably getting paid by the hour or not much of a salary, and trying to work really hard to get that permanent placement with a department, but just remain patient. Don't try and rush through inside sales, because it's really the greatest growth you're going to have of your entire career. Ask a bunch of questions, get as much exposure to as many departments as possible, and then put yourself in a position through your sales where you're going to have a little bit of an opportunity to make a choice on something that's going to work best for you. Because I was definitely guilty of I want to get promoted. Anytime there was an opening with the senior team, I was probably going to try and interview. So for me, I guess looking back, I would just say, hey man, just be patient, get a full season under your belt, and just stay committed and focused on just getting better. What I say don't do is in inside sales, is don't get sucked into the drama. Be it your own drama internally of am I going to get promoted? Am I not? Am I going to make the sale or not? Don't, be aware of where you're at on the sales board, but don't let it determine your day and your mood. Oh man, that guy passed me on the board. That sucks. Don't get dragged into that. Don't drag others into that. The whole oh, well, this manager said this to this rep, or, that guy closed that sale on an inbound call. He's not even that good. Don't go down that path. It doesn't do you any good to get sucked into all that. Just really focus on yourself and day-to-day incremental improvement. In the long run, that's what's going to pay off better for you.
I think that's incredible advice. And I know a lot of people won't believe this, but since you're so recent to selling, maybe you're already going through this, but there's a lot of days where I'm slogging through a projections report that I've got to give to senior management, where I'm like, oh my gosh, just someone give me a lead list in the phone, and I wish I was back making some of these calls and doing this again. This is heavy lives of the crown. And as cool as some of the stuff that you get access to, there are a lot of moments where you're like, man, I wish I could go back, and I wish I could just do that. But I also think what's good about your trajectory is, and advice I'd continue to give you going forward is, make sure that you're always learning, growing, and make sure you stay connected to sales in some way, right? Because I know one of the things we got to do soon is let you go because you're going to go teach sales training to your staff.
That's right.
I do think it's critical that you can show your staff and that you remain connected to your fan base and show them that you can still swing the bat a little bit, right? And
Right.
step in and make those sales and contribute on that side. So can you talk about the importance that you've seen from leaders who really were able to step in and contribute on the revenue generation side and how that's made an impact on how you want to be a leader?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the big things that I noticed and I guess didn't expect when I first started selling what was the level of eagerness and willingness that some of the staff at Minnesota, specifically the management staff had in Minnesota, of just like, you need me to jump on a call, jump on a call. Like, you got a big lead that you need help closing, I'm happy to help drive it across the finish line for you. From that standpoint, both Corey and Jake were great about that when I was on the Timberwolves side of the business. With the Link side of the business, Erin Henning, whenever she needed to get involved, talking to a longtime season ticket member that was disgruntled about something, she said, hey, if there's a major issue and they just won't budge, like, I'll take them on. Like, go ahead and send them through. And just having that confidence that, hey, like, if I need help, my manager's got my back, both from the standpoint of like service and they'll help me out, but also from the standpoint of, if I'm like grinding on somebody, I can't figure out how to close it, hey, let's have a quick conversation. And then they'll either redirect, my focus and my energy, or they'll step in and try and make something happen as well. Was always just a huge encouraging factor for me as a sales rep, knowing that, the managers have my back and they know what they're talking about. Like, they proved it right there. I jump into a meeting with them and all of a sudden my head's spinning, but they're closing a deal that I couldn't get moved after months. Was always an encouraging factor.
No, that's cool. And, one thing I'd say is, I love to hear you talk about that. And, I love to talk about it too, because, one of the biggest challenges I see with young salespeople is they'll die holding on to their own pride. And it's really, really stupid. Like, they feel like they need to do everything themselves, that they don't want to bring their managers in because it either shows weakness or they're worried about what their managers are going to say when they do it. And, ultimately there's a scoreboard. And, reps just have to lose that pride of I put it up there myself, because it all counts the same.
Yeah, I mean, the saying that we had for a while in the Timberwolves office is there's no style points in sales.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how sexy it was that you closed the deal on a one-call close or the guy that closed it after 20 calls. Like, it's the same dollars at the end of the day, and that's really all that matters. Doesn't matter how helter-skelter it was you got to the finish line. If you got there, you got there.
And the more resourceful you are as a salesperson, the better you are as a salesperson. Those things are 100% correlated. The more that you can start thinking about, how do I use my manager? How do I use my director? How do I use our arena? How do I use the facility? How do I use the bobblehead that I have? The more that you start thinking in that way, the better that you get. There's a direct correlation between those two things.
No, absolutely. The more creative you can get in your sales process, the more opportunities you're going to give yourself to close. And you're also going to set yourself apart from other sales reps throughout both, your team and across the league. The people that get, to share best practices in the league meetings type environment are typically not the guy that says, yeah, no, we grinded it out and made 700 phone calls and that's how we closed all this business out. It's, hey, we took a little bit of a different approach. We noticed these couple things about our market and that's how we turn profit. That's the guy that ends up getting noticed and moves on faster.
There's no doubt. So changing subject a little bit, work-life balance, to me is critical. And, I've dedicated a third of my website to it, no matter what sport we're selling or what we're doing. And the one thing that always stood out to me about you and our interactions has been your positive attitude. And so, what do you do outside of the office to keep yourself so positive with all the work that sports business entails?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, one thing just on work-life balance, I think you can't compare your work-life balance to someone else's.
Yes.
Everyone has their own definition of what that means. So for some people, a 40-hour work week is plenty or more than enough. For some people, they can handle a 60-hour week. So I don't think you can ever truly define in terms of numbers what exactly that means. And that's something that I had to learn, because some people would be like, man, I'm stressed out. We've been working a lot. And, occasionally I'd be like, I feel fine. Like I want to keep working. So I guess for starters, I want to make a note on that. It's just, you have to understand what your own balance is, and you're going to have to discover that and understand that it can change too, depending on what you've got going on in life. For me, I'm a former track and field athlete, so I love to go for a run. It's just a way to kind of just flush it all out, go run around randomly through the city, and, no specific direction or path sometimes, just go for an hour and just see where I end up. For me, that's been really healthy, in a way that I've always dealt with some stress. Also just finding that core group of friends. I think in sports, we tend to always hang out with other people in sports just because of the crazy lifestyle and the hours and everything, which is great. I think when you do that sort of thing, though, occasionally you have to set up a rule of, hey guys, today, no talk about the office.
Yep.
Can't talk partial plans or renewal strategies or anything like that. Set up some fun penalties for it. If you do, you got to buy the next round, that sort of thing.
Yep.
I think that's a good thing, but also just having a circle outside of the office to help balance you out as well. I was on a kickball team in Minneapolis. And we played once a week and had a tournament every couple months. And that was a lot of fun. It was just something completely off the wall, didn't relate to anything else that I was doing. If people asked me about my job and about what was going on, they were typically asking about, is Karl-Anthony Towns going to get a double-double, against Portland? Like, it was strictly team and fan side of stuff, which was great because I got to be a little bit of a fan too. And so I think just being involved in things, I'm involved in my church down here, and just being connected to other things that can pull some of your attention away from, the sales part of your life. Not that you necessarily ever turn it completely off, but just turn the volume down a little bit, I think is good.
Yeah. And those are all spot on. And I think that's a great 3-point program for any inside sales rep that, if people are listening, that they should take and rip off. And I think another thing that's really impressed me about you during our interactions is just a genuine desire for knowledge and growth. And so can you talk about some of the ways in which that, you've been able to grow as a salesperson outside of the office? And, I know we've had a beer if I've been in town, or we've had coffee, yes. Or, I know that you've taught a class as much as all that. Can you talk about, how that, genuine, desire for knowledge and desire for growth can also play a part of who you are outside the office?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to a certain degree, it's a little bit of who I am. I'm a little bit of a nerd in that regard. I'm just always intellectually curious about things, want to just learn about how stuff works and why that is the way it is. But I think just applying it to what I do, when I was first getting started with the Timberwolves, we did a little bit of a book club. And we had some of our leadership team that would assign a couple books out, one every couple months, and we'd get together every 2 weeks, voluntary, didn't have to do it, something you could do before and after work, just as an opportunity to kind of learn and hone your craft even more. So that was a really cool experience, just being able to be around some other people that really wanted to also grow and learn. Intentionally getting around a community of people that were of that similar mindset. One of the things I was taught when I was in inside sales, as part of my inside sales team either found new opportunities or got promoted, was as new people were starting, that all of a sudden I became the expert. And like, how do I log a call in our CRM system? Like, simple stuff, but that all of a sudden that people were asking me questions. And I think that there's no really greater demonstration of mastery of a skill than being able to teach a skill to someone else.
Absolutely.
So that's something that, Brett, I've really focused on is, if I've learned this, how do I also teach this? Because then I really know what I'm talking about. And I remember as an inside sales rep, whenever a senior rep took a little bit of time just to, hey, try this and try this, like it was probably a 5-minute conversation, but it meant the world to me. Like, having somebody take me out to lunch as a junior rep was like life-changing, made my week type thing. So I always was, as I was in Minnesota, trying to keep that in mind. And luckily, Minnesota has a very intentional culture in that regard, where they surround junior reps with some senior staff and try and grow those relationships and develop the staff. They do a very, very good job with that. But outside of the office, honestly, I try and read quite a bit. I'm always chasing after a new book, a new read, sometimes related directly to sales, sometimes not. Right now, I'm plowing through Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body, but I've learned a couple things within that I'm starting to apply to my sales cycle. And so just, I guess, keeping an open mind as to different experiences and things that might not tie directly back into what I'm doing can tie back in kind of a roundabout sort of way. And then you mentioned I taught a little bit at the University of Minnesota. It was an awesome experience. Would recommend, anybody that's in ticket sales for a couple years and, looking for a new set of challenges, try and grab the attention of a college room of students on a Monday night, and get them excited about selling tickets. It was some truly interesting conversations, and had to fall back a little bit on some improv training and just crazy activities just to grab their attention and really drive home some points. But a lot of fun, a really great experience.
Nice. I think the meta in terms of how nerdy you are when it comes to sales is when all of a sudden you start taking sales advice from books that have absolutely nothing to do with sales. Trust me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm there completely as well. So I know we got to wrap up here because you got to go teach. But last question. Love asking this to every person that we have on the podcast. What drives you?
Yeah, great question. For me, I've always been a very competitive person, but specifically the couple things that drive me, Brett, are, I have the opportunity, specifically within sports, to create an incredible moment for someone's life. As I look back on my own life and growing up as a kid, some of the strongest moments that I had with my family, big family of 5 kids. So, some of the biggest moments in just personal growth came from being involved in athletics or at athletic events that we shared together. And I think back to my time with different teams and different moments that I've been able to create for fans. For instance, I had a season ticket member on the Timberwolves side, and we were able to get his son to rebound before the game. Just pick up the ball, throw it back to a player. Kid was like 10 years old. That guy came up to me later on that day, tears in his eyes, talking about how incredible of an experience that was for his son. Or being able to provide experience for my Lynx season ticket holders, and talking to a fan and telling them how important it is that they get a season membership so their daughter can see these great role models that we've got on the court, understanding that it's a real thing. I'm not just talking that talk. They are really that great. And then hearing the next summer that, her daughter's been involved in basketball and create a whole new group of friends, and it's completely transformed her life. Like what we do in sports is unlike anything else that I can really think of. And the way that it can just empower, inspire, and unite communities. I mean, what we do makes a huge impact with the people that we serve. And I think keeping that in my mind and having experienced that in my own life is really what drives me. So kind of a rambling long answer to a simple question, but I guess it would be that exactly, just the impact sports can make within the community. So, yeah.
Listen, I think when people answer this question, their answer is, well, I want to run a team someday. Those are the people that those people don't end up running the team because they take a very myopic look at what the power of sports actually is. And I think a lot of times the people who answer that way and genuinely believe in the power of change that sports can have, those are the people that end up changing it. So, listen, Kyle, I no doubt appreciate the time. This was awesome. Exactly the type of perspective I was looking for our fans to be able to take a look at. So appreciate the time and good luck with your sales training today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it, man. Wish you the best of luck with the future of the podcast. And next time you're in town, definitely give a shout. We'd love to catch up.
We'll do, bud.
All right. Thanks.